Hi, and welcome to Meet the Mayor. This is Larry Petraccaro with Mayor Dean Dafis of Maplewood. And we're going to be talking about a few topics that will be important to the town, and just to try to give you a little bit of an idea of what some of the things that are going on. The first thing I'd like to talk about, Dean, is the census and the impact it might have had on Maplewood, and also the fact that it appears that we are now redistricted from the 10th Congressional District to, I think it's the 11th. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
That's right, Larry. And again, it's a pleasure being with you here this evening. And thank you for carrying this tradition onward all these years. I'm delighted to sit in the mayor's chair, as other mayors have. Quite an honor and privilege. So yes, we have been redistricted. Every 10 years after the census results come in, congressional redistricting happens. And in a couple years from now, we're going to have legislative redistricting at the state level, right? So we're no longer in the 10th Congressional District, represented by Donald Payne, Jr. We are now represented by Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, along with South Orange. South Orange also moved. It's exciting. It's exciting for a lot of good reasons. For Maplewood, we believe that this is going to definitely increase our voice at the table at the federal level, our federal representation on important issues that affect us here, like taxes, like infrastructure improvements. You know, we all have aging infrastructure in our towns. And it's certainly going to be a great thing for Congresswoman Sherrill as she heads into a midterm battle.
Well, have you met Mikey Sherrill?
I have. She called to congratulate me, and I called her back to congratulate her, and we have met to talk about sitting down and seeing how we can work together.
But let's go back to the census.
Sure.
The impact that might have on Maplewood, or what did we gain? What did we learn from the census? Did we get more diverse, less diverse, richer, poorer? Or does that kind of information even show up? What do we use it for, the census information?
Right. So we increased our population by about 8%. We are now at 25,684. And we did become more diverse, particularly in Native American, Asian, and Hispanic, Latino, Latinx representation. And that's exciting. Unfortunately, we saw a drop of about 1% in our African American population. And we are becoming more affluent. There's no question about that. Over 400 homes, private homes, were sold in the last year alone. We are very, very hot. And those homes were very competitive. Multiple bids were on them. So that's exciting. A lot of people moving in from the city, like-minded folks politically. But it's also something we have to keep our eyes on and do whatever we can to ensure that we remain affordable to all, right? Because we have our seniors who built this community who are finding it more and more difficult to age in place. And we're running out of room to build new housing. So how are we going to meet the ongoing housing need? And with incoming families, obviously there's more students into the school district, and that causes more density, and that has other implications as well. So, with every good thing, there is with every yin, there's a yang, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you have to sort of balance out these things. But, the census overall was great for us. And the census results, we use them to fight for, again, our representation at every level, at the county, at the state, and the federal level. We want to make sure that we're going to get our state aid for our school district, which also aids in keeping our taxes below a certain percentage, right? We want to make sure that we are going to be competitive in getting all the necessary resources that are going to come in for infrastructure, for all kinds of grants, for our fields, for everything that is part of our daily lives. And that's why we worked so hard to get people engaged, to respond to the census, because if you don't respond to it, you're essentially invisible. Your voice doesn't matter. And so programs and services will not be available. And we don't want that.
Well, what was our response rate? I understand I thought it was fairly good.
Oh, it was pretty good. It was better than the last round in 2010. I don't remember the exact percentage off my head at the moment, but we did a fantastic job of getting people engaged in answering the census despite COVID. That was happening at the same time. So, maybe people, because they were isolated, they found something else to do with their energy.
Well, you mentioned it was an 8% increase to what, the 25,684 or something like
Yep,
that.
yep.
Was the 8% increase extraordinary, normal, less than others? I mean, because New Jersey's population increased, what, about that same amount, didn't it?
Right. I think it's on par with the state percentage, and certainly a little bit higher than what we saw in 2010.
Mhm.
We are a popular community. We have a lot to offer. We're diverse, we're engaged, we're very civic-minded, and we have a lot to offer in terms of arts and this kind of thing, community television, engagement. So people want to come here,
Yeah, we saw a few houses turn over. I mean, in my experience, it seems like it's not been a transient community for the most part. People tend to stay, they move and they stay. But we have seen on my block, for example, a number of homes that have been sold, and it seems like everybody moves in from Brooklyn or someplace like that.
Right.
Most of them seem to be coming from the city.
Right. But what we also see is that our students grow up, they get married, they move away, employment opportunities outside of here, but then they come back to raise their family here. So that says a lot about who we are.
Yeah, no, it does. Well, the census data, I guess that's given to you or given to the towns. Is there anything that you garnered from that is going to dictate certain actions that you may have to take? You mentioned you mentioned two things that have to do with population growth. One is the lack of space for housing, which is to some extent a benefit because you don't have to worry about a shopping center being built next door, right?
Right.
And the other thing was the schools and the need to accommodate more students. And I have, in fact, Clinton, where my kids went to school, is there's a lot of construction going on there. And I don't think Clinton's the only one. I think many of the schools have construction, don't they?
Right, but that was part of a school-wide facility upgrade that we bonded for, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago now, and that is finally seeing its way through all the elementary schools, and it's part of the facilities upgrade is also happening in tandem with an integration plan.
Right.
So that's what that construction is about. It's not necessarily to make the schools bigger because we have more students to accommodate, but it's more about having better schools for our students. A lot of our students were outside, even during the winter. That's just, not worthy of who we are here in our community and what we can offer our students. So, and it's part of a necessary integration. So that's what that construction has to do. But, I think the census results and what we've learned from that, we're definitely going to apply and integrate in our master plan review, which we will start this year, and that will probably be at least a 2-year process. The master plan is essentially what the word says. It's the blueprint of every town or city. Every single element, your housing, your transportation, your open space, where do you have your parks, where do you have recreation, your stormwater management, how are you doing flood mitigation and other things, economic development, your commercial corridors, where are they, your zoning, right, where do you have commerce, where do you have private residential, where do you have mixes, all of that, all of those elements make up every town and city. And as we engage in re-examining and redoing ours, we're definitely going to be thinking about all these things that we have to accommodate and balancing out the interests and not doing things that will have unintended consequences for the next generation down the road.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I think planning both strategically and tactically is something that, you don't want to let events overwhelm you. You'd rather be in front of them. But, one of the things that's, you touched on it briefly, that has been on my mind a little bit lately. You were talking about aging in place, and there aren't a lot of places, I guess. I mean, there is some new construction going on in town. We've got about a minute and a half left, but maybe briefly, is there a lot of new construction going on in town, not just for single-family homes or renovations, but either for businesses or apartments or things like that?
Yeah, so there is a lot of construction in town. We're always trying to create new housing opportunities, and we can have several segments just on this alone. This is a hot topic around the state. And, you know, even within the finance industry, because for the past, I should say, 15 years or so, there was a financing preference for rentals as opposed to condos. Condos kind of were disfavored by banks. And so you kind of saw that there weren't a lot of ownership opportunities for our folks who wanted to downsize. They had to consider a rental. And some of these rentals are not affordable, right? So we definitely have an aging in place crisis that we have to solve. We need to find ways to allow our seniors to remain in the community that they built for us, the community that we're enjoying because of them. And that is a multi-tiered solution. It's not just a housing problem. It has to do with services. It has to do with transportation. You know, when you're downsizing like that, you also want to make sure that you can get around when you can't drive anymore, right? So you want to make sure that we remain transit oriented. And we have a lot of, improvements to make in that regard. We've kind of focused only on certain populations or segments, and we've made a lot of advancements as well. We've become an age-friendly community designated by AARP as a great place to grow up and grow up in and grow old in. So we're making advances, and we're putting aging in place and age friendliness at the center of all our decision making going forward. So this is definitely something that we hope to turn around.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to take a break. So if you'll stay with us, we'll be back in about a minute.
Dad, we need to talk. If you're not going to listen to me, who will you listen to?
Jeffrey!
Is that Marcia Gay Harden?
I think so.
You're getting older.
Not that old.
Your brain is changing.
That's what I was saying.
Honey, I've got experience with this. Jeffrey, brain health is all about making the most of your brain as you age.
Really?
Whoa, where did she go?
Learn what you can do to help keep your brain healthy at brainhealth.gov.
Hi, welcome back to Meet the Mayor. This is Larry Petraccaro with Mayor Dean Dafis. And we were talking a little bit about the census, the new congressional districts, some of the construction that's going on in town, and some of the issues that we're going to have to be dealing with because of the population growth and because of really the popularity, I guess, of the town. So I think the last thing we talked about a little bit was that you said there's a lot of construction going, but it was interesting to me to see how you're not isolating the individual problems and treating them separately. You're trying to see how they integrate together, how the population increase may affect the school district, how it may affect the types of housing that we have, how we allow people to age in place, as you put it. So that's something that I think probably would be a good topic for another time in more detail. Let me jump to COVID. You know, we've had Candace Davenport on the show, and from what I can tell, she's done a great job in trying to keep track of everything.
Fantastic
and
job.
It was impressive to me to see how the health department has become so proactive, actually.
Yes.
But has the Omicron variant caused any blips or disruptions in the town, in either the governance or the economic life of it, or anything like that?
Oh, certainly. It certainly has, as it has around the state and around the world, right? We've had some staffing challenges at Town Hall because of it. Certainly challenges as our kids returned to in-person learning in the classroom where they belong. And, it's hurt our businesses too, because people have felt less inclined to go back indoors into, closed settings, right? So it has affected everyone, right? And it creates that continued anxiety and exhaustion that we have been dealing with for 2 years now, right? And it's affecting everyone's mental health, young and old. So it definitely has presented challenges. But, when I talk about COVID, I also say that there have been silver linings. Even in the worst of times, there are silver linings. And, what we have seen in this community is beautiful. We've seen people help others, knock on their neighbors and get to know them in ways they didn't know them before, get groceries for them. We've seen ordinary residents with no medical experience, not first responders themselves, start community drives to help people get to vaccination centers, to help them get appointments. It was so hard to get an appointment in the beginning because everybody was rushing to get one, right?
Yeah.
Or driving people there, seniors and others who lacked, transportation on their own. We've seen incredible goodwill with food drives and clothes drives and support systems. We've seen parents help other parents whose children are struggling, We've seen pods, like little educational pods, throughout our community. So, it's brought us together while we have been isolated and while we have been hurting. It has also, ironically, brought us together. It's taught us a lot about who we are. And we are incredibly resilient. And Omicron is already starting to break. And we are seeing the numbers go down. We're not quite where we were pre-Omicron levels, but we're getting there. And we feel confident that in the next month or so, we will be able to relax some of the mitigation measures and restrictions we put into place that required indoor masking, for instance, and start returning to some new normal. Because I don't think some things are going to change at all.
No way. I guess we're going to find out, but I think you're right. It'll be like a transition to something that will eventually be common. One of the things that did happen, though, during the pandemic was the opening up of the Greenway markets in the Old Kings. What can you tell me about that, or tell us about that?
That's terrific. One of the best things that happened, right? So I just want to say 41 new businesses opened up.
Really?
In the past year. 41. Again, economic development, popularity, that's how hot we are in Maplewood. And they were spread out throughout, not just in the village, not just on Springfield Avenue, but on the emerging Irvington corridor as well, on Valley Street, and all kinds of businesses, not just restaurants, but there's a new school for children with special needs, autistic children. There's a new deli. There's a new salon. There's all kinds of things. And we're really proud of that. And yes, there's a new market, which was something that I was really, really involved in personally, bringing people together, not taking no for an answer. That spot there is it's a challenging spot to fill. You can't bring in a shop right there, or our Trader Joe's. It's a small footprint. There isn't a lot of parking. There isn't a lot of, opportunity for deliveries, right? It's a challenging spot. So we made calls and we made sure all of our brokers were connected. And I think over 50 grocers were contacted. And we realized during this project, if you will, that significant consolidation has happened in the supermarket and grocery business. So while you thought that you were contacting Dean's Organics over here, that it was some independent thing, you found out, no, they're part of like Key Food, like a major conglomerate. It was a fascinating experience. And I'm really, really, really proud that we were able to make it happen. And we're so grateful for Greenway Market's investment in our community. And if you haven't gone, please go. They need our help because people got used to not having it there,
Yeah,
and they've
yeah.
been going to other places, and they do deliveries, and they're adjusting what they offered in the beginning when they first opened as they get to know our specific needs and wants. And they're terrific. And the manager there who's running the shop, Adam Shapiro, I can't say enough good things about him. He is truly a community partner, truly a good neighbor. He said to me that he and his wife came to Maplewood for a couple of months, and they would experience our town.
Mhm.
They would, patronize the restaurants. They would do the outdoor dining, and they would watch our pedestrian traffic. So they're really part of the community. They've become family. And we're excited about it.
Is Greenway part of a larger organization as well? Is this-
Yes, and they have several locations in similarly situated downtown transit-oriented communities. The nearest one to us is in Ridgewood.
It's a little ways away, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, a big shout out to one of our famous Maplewoodians, our historian, Susan Newberry. You know Susan, I'm sure. Susan's been in town a very long time, and Susan was instrumental in this success story. She really was. She had heard about Kings moving out in another community, and that Greenway was moving into the Kings spot. Maybe that would work for them here. And so, that was part of the connection that happened ultimately. So we owe a lot to Susan, and I want to make sure Susan Newberry.
Yeah, well, and it's a good spot, especially considering what you said, the transit, it's sort of transit friendly.
Yes,
People come-
it
coming
is.
in
It is.
coming out.
And we are not back to full commuting as we know it before.
Mhm.
People are returning to their offices now in a hybrid format. So I think as more of that picks up, he will have more traffic.
Well, I've noticed the times I've driven by the train station, early in the pandemic, maybe a year or two ago, it was like nobody.
Right.
Now it's pretty well filled.
Yeah, it's getting dense again,
Yes,
right?
it's getting denser again.
Right.
The what about the movie theater? Are there any plans for that?
That is a bit of a more challenging
I would think so.
prospect, Larry. So, it's tough. Movie theaters of that nature are not where it's at these days, right? But there are parties discussing that location and looking into making it happen. Significant investment will be required into refurbishing that space.
Mhm.
But fortunately, there are people involved who are experts who've done this kind of thing elsewhere. And they're looking at it as more than just movies, right? A few screens, but also performance space for live music. Why not, right?
Mhm.
Why not have jazz on Sundays there, right? It
Mhm.
would be a destination. Community space for all kinds of things, open forums, educational opportunities, something like this, and rentals of all kinds, private rentals, and a cafe with liquor because everyone wants to drink wherever they go these days. So, we hope that this is going to happen, but this is a far more complicated transaction than the supermarket was. So it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Well, I understand initially the movie theater, somebody told me, was a location for off-Broadway plays and things at one time. It was, when we moved in here, it was just the one screen.
Right.
Which was, it was a pretty interesting place. Now, I think they were up to about 6 or 7 screens, perhaps.
Right. I mean, it's a jewel. And
Yeah.
I hope that we do what we can to preserve it. And that I'm involved in that too.
Good.
Trying to make it happen, making sure people are talking, and when they're not talking, why aren't they talking? And I do think that's my job as the head representative of the town, It's not my job to get in the middle of a private transaction, but certainly to bring a lot of interested stakeholders together to solve the problem and see how we can make this work.
Well, we've just got a little over a minute and a half left. You mentioned that there were 41 new businesses that had started up in Maplewood during this time. Can you kind of categorize them or maybe point out some of them that you find particularly interesting?
Well, we talked about Greenway, which is a major success, right? We had a couple of existing businesses expand or move around, right? Lorena's is in the former casting space, and they're doing terrific there with the bar and everything and the 2 types of menus. They're always busy. We've had a lot of personal care services businesses open up. We've had 2 CBD businesses open up in the village alone. The school that I talked about, the new deli on Valley Street, the new pizza shop on Irvington Avenue, the new dollar store over there. So there's been a lot of different kinds of activity to meet all needs.
Well, what you said before, it's a pretty diverse place, so we're going to need to have a variety of things to meet a variety of needs.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, we're going to have to call. We've only got 24 seconds left, and it sounds like not a good time to get into a deep conversation. So thank you for joining us with Meet the Mayor, and we'll look forward to speaking with Mayor Dafis in another couple of weeks.
I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Larry. My pleasure.
Okay.